The time is 6:35, and I call this meeting of the Waterbury Select Board to order. The first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda.
Is it recording?
Is it recording?
Recording in progress.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as amended on the consent agenda to remove item E as per the request of the applicant.
All right, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All of those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions? The Alyssa's thumb went up the screen.
I thought up or down might be better than aye or no delayed, but it stays way too long. So sorry, I'll say aye.
All right, agenda is approved. The next item on the agenda is to approve the consent agenda. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
I can second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, consent is approved. Next item on the agenda is public comment. It's for anyone to speak on anything that is not on the warned agenda. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Sandy, your hand went up first.
On June 3rd, I sent the email questioning the housing trust fund created by a select board vote and the legality of creating a fund without voter approval. I did this after the select board approved the housing trust fund allowable uses, which included a provision of rollover funds not used in the fiscal year. If this is truly a reserve fund dedicated solely to the housing trust fund, it cannot be created by the select board vote. It must be presented to the voters and approved. After it is approved by voters, the select board will have the ability to spend the money for the purposes created. According to the Vermont statutes, a reserve fund is a separate dedicated financial account that is created to fund a specific municipal purpose whose balance is carried over from year to year. Reserve funds are created by approval from a majority of voters at an annual or special town meeting. A reserve fund can be created for any legitimate municipal purpose. Once created, it falls under the control and direction of the select board. The reason for creating a reserve fund is twofold. First, it ensures that money appropriated by voters only will be used for the stated purpose of the reserve fund. Once created, the funds can be disbursed by the select board without further voter approval. Second, a reserve fund allows the select board to roll over money that is placed in the fund and not spent from year to year. This is contrary to the general rule of budgeting under Vermont law, which is that money not spent in a budget year must be reallocated the following year as part of the budget approval process at town meeting. Bottom line is that a reserve fund does not exist unless the voters have approved it at an annual or special meeting. If no such record exists, neither does the fund. I propose that the select board create an article for town meeting agenda so that the taxpayers can officially approve the creation of the reserve fund. Initial funding can be created from the unused previous year expenditures allowed. Just in case you happen to have deleted my email by accident, of course, there it is. And I also did a copy of what I just said. So, thank you.
Thanks.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Is that 5 minutes for public comment instead of 3?
Sure. Maybe I misspoke. Any other public comments? All right, we'll move on to tree board update. All right. Welcome.
I'm Jane Brown, I'm the chair of the tree board, and
Michael Chiapo on the tree ward.
Mike's on our tree board as well. Okay, we were asked to come here to present a proposed budget. One of your select board members has been coming to a couple of our tree board meetings to find out what we're up to. And we had a recent meeting, and described maybe that we feel like it's time really to ask for our own budget. We've been sharing a budget of around $8,000 townwide for all tree work per year with the Public Works Department. And so it's been kind of an eye opener, because if you have recently had to deal with some Emerald Ash Borer information, and we have some Emerald Ash Borer in the village, and we're looking more closely at what it costs to remove a really large shade tree, and it eats up almost half the budget to remove one tree. It's $3,800. If there's power line work, it could be more. It's not really, the tree board has been going along for, I guess we've been around for 12 years or more. I'm one of the original members, and I can't remember exactly when we started. I should know that, but we haven't asked for our own budget, but we feel that the time has come, because we have been doing recently a lot of maintenance work. Our board decided that the town had planted trees for a number of years, and it was time to focus on our maintenance. But it's become, I think that's been an eye opener, that we've been doing maintenance and we're not doing planning. We're not looking at the big picture. We're not understanding. And last year we did get an estimate to do item number 2 on here at the top, structural pruning on South and North Main Street, and we have the estimate for about $4,500 to do that work, and we weren't able to do it because there was other townwide work that needs to be done for tree removal, et cetera, by the Public Works Department, so we have to put that on hold. And it's important to do structural pruning before trees get too big, because trees respond better if they're pruned and they have crossing branches or a double leader, to remove that before the branches have gotten too big and you're not damaging the tree. It's able to respond and heal over easily, and much cheaper to do that. So it was a shame to put that off. So we have that in our budget here. So backing up a little bit, we feel like we need, and we also started a street tree inventory. Number 1, in 2016 with volunteers, and then we picked it up 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. It's work that you do in the summertime. You look at the trees with the software that's available from the Urban Community Forestry Program. And we really, as volunteers, we really don't have the time or the expertise to interpret the data and even to complete the inventory.
But even with that, we could take some of the work that we've done over the years and perhaps translate that into working with the arborists and piggyback a lot of that information if somebody can get some good solution.
It's not wasted. The software that the state has, the Urban Community Forestry Program through State Forestry, is very good. It just needs somebody with more time and more expertise, I think, to both collect the data and to analyze the data. There's no purpose to just collecting photographs and names of all the trees on streets if you're not going to interpret the data. And what we can get out of a completed inventory is an analysis that shows us the quantities and types of trees that we have, the percentages of different types of trees, the sizes of our trees by diameter of the breast height, pH, conditions of our trees. We have a large number of poor or fair trees and what should be done about them, maybe they need to be removed if they're unsafe. And then ultimately plan so that you can figure out where you have locations where you can plant new trees, what's desirable. And then recommendations that could come from a professional about tree types, canopy health for our village. We'd like to, and stormwater benefits from the having canopy of trees to disperse stormwater and rainwater. So we'd like to, we have some data for Waterbury Village, and we also went up ourselves and did collect information on the center, the Center Green, but we'd like to work with somebody to expand that into Waterbury Center. And also there are missing streets in Waterbury Village. For example, Waterbury South and North Main Street were not included in 2016 because there was anticipation of the Waterbury Main Street reconstruction coming. So the trees are going to be removed. So that's an important thing. That's our priority, is to try to get that inventory finished. That we think would be about $8,500. I didn't include, and it's number one in other work at the bottom, Hope Cemetery and Maple Street Cemetery both have lots of trees, and the Cemetery Commission has a budget. So I think we would roll that in if they were willing to pay for it, or we do that as part next year. We've been working closely with them because they have a lot of trees, and we've done some planting there. In item number 2, I go over some of the tree work to do with I explained structural pruning on South and North Main Street for about 60 trees, and we have an estimate for that. And then we have some every other year ash tree inoculation against emerald ash borer for 2 good-sized, very lovely trees in Oak Baby Park. They're near the play area. We'd like to plant 2 crab apple trees at the community garden, 2 apple trees at the community garden, where we planted 10 fruit trees in 2023 with the grant. The grant money is all dried up, so we just feel like we need 2 more trees to complete the line of trees by the entrance to the community garden. We are now a Tree City USA. We put in the application last year. We were recognized with that, so we will be having annual Arbor Day events. We haven't selected the location yet to plant a tree, but I think that would be around $400. We've done a lot of mulching in town with trees, and maybe you can communicate, work more with the town public works to help us on that. We estimate that to do the preparation might be around $100 for mulch. Branch Out Burlington has inexpensive bare root trees that you can order in January, early February, and pick up in April. And the benefit of bare root trees is that they're easy for volunteers or for a tree board like ourselves to plant, because they don't come in really pretty well. But you have to be prepared and ready to go properly on the ground. So we just get a few of those, possibly put those at the Maple Street Cemetery. We have a sign that we received as part of our Waterbury Tree City USA designation. It's a nice sign. Location. It might cost some money. Maybe near welcome to the library. And then we've been paying ourselves to go to urban community forestry trainings. We could invite town public works staff, or possibly have training in town for tree pruning. And we estimate that will continue. So I think that, so the combination of the inventory, the structural pruning, and these other elements came up to about $14,800, which seems, with our designation as a Tree City USA and our, we're an established tree board, but we feel that we're maybe spending too much time mulching trees and not looking at the big picture and where we're going, so that we can have a better plan for our tree canopy, which is important. with climate change and also with stormwater, with benefits to, shade trees. The stormwater dissipates rainwater. Helps to absorb rainwater.
There was,
Makes for a healthier community. There's a lot of statistics about public health and people living in communities where they're healthy. Makes our town attractive.
one last point to just end with, at our last meeting, somebody flew a drone up and took an overhead canopy shot of downtown Waterbury. And we looked at that compared to about 25 years ago. Now we challenge everybody to take a quick peek at what those two comparisons look like. They certainly look very different in terms of how our canopy. We're trying to have more of a strategic long-term plan because it's very easy to get caught up in tree, focus on the forest, so to speak.
Yes, and we also want to roll in Waterbury Center, which is highly desirable place for people to recreate and live. We haven't been able to do that, so we want to include that in our inventory. And it goes along with that grant that's out there. Any questions?
First, thank you, Mike, for all your work hanging the garland all over town. It makes town look much better. But going on your request, the street tree inventory, one, is this all paid staff? Because I know I was part of that tree inventory back in 2016. And I believe that we did that all volunteer. And I know it's probably, it was more just a count and stuff like that. And probably nothing was done with the information that was solved.
Yeah,
Is
this
this,
should be paying someone to do the work.
this
Yes.
someone that we can't
We
get?
feel like we're not getting it done.
We, Elise Shadler and some of the members of urban forestry, they're great at educating folks, but we need somebody who's pretty dedicated to it, so be somebody professional.
I thought we were pretty dedicated.
Oh,
No,
we-
But I think
Oh.
we are probably tripling the amount. We didn't finish Waterbury
Right,
Village.
exactly.
We now have 10-year-old data.
It needs,
We don't have Waterbury Center.
yeah. And
We
some of
don't
the
have these
trees,
two cemeteries that have a lot of trees that add a lot.
I'm not saying the work shouldn't be done, but
Yeah.
can we not? I always think about taxpayers, can we not use more volunteer help to mitigate what the cost is?
Okay, I'm telling you that I think our tree board is a little burned out. I feel like we
Shouldn't
need
be
help.
just the tree board. There are a lot of people in that. that
it's a
like
good
trees.
point, Mike, it's a good point, and, we've been doing the volunteer route for what seems like about 9 years. And we're just not getting results. And we can keep trying to go at it with volunteers and keep our fingers crossed. Just try to come up with a different solution that may be.
Like the rotary hanging up the yard. We used to do that.
I just hate to see another, well, we're, as I said, we have data that's 10 years old, it's never been interpreted.
Right.
And now we need to update it, and I feel like our group just can't do it. So,
Any other questions from anyone else on the board?
Another question about the ash inoculation. Surely you can do that for $200 per tree?
yes. It's based on the California. So the costs have been running between $250 and $300.
And that's for some of the larger.
Yeah, the one at Hope Cemetery is even bigger, and that one costs. That costs twice as much, more like 700.
Maybe the advantage of an arborist is get a little bit of direction from that person and say which trees are in trees and maybe set up that plan where.
Well, the other thing with ash trees is it's important. It costs a lot to remove a tree that has been infested with the boars because they they remove the structure internally of the tree by the infestation, so that the trees become brittle. So, arborist teams don't want, they can't climb the tree. So they sort of fall apart. And so, so in a way, you're keeping the tree healthy and you're avoiding what could be maybe, instead of $3,800 for the tree, it might be $7,000, $8,000. The numbers that we've gotten, it's sort of like a cost benefit analysis. So it's better to spend maybe a little bit of money, keep these trees healthy, and hopefully at some point there may be a remedy for emerald ash. But until that day, you sort of pick the trees you want to pick in public spaces. We don't have a lot of ash trees in the village. We have only like 7 or 8.
Well, we would have a small.
We had 2 removed last year. One was infected, and the other one had some structural problems next to the daycare center. So we had a roundtable on emerald ash board in April. Was about the cost benefit. You pick the trees that you want to.
Any other questions from the board? Mike?
Just following up on ash borer, is the inoculation, is that pretty, long-term solution?
It's good for 2 years.
Oh, it's gonna be a
Every
perpetual.
year. The adults fly around in June, July, and the damage to the trees doesn't come from the adults. It comes from the borers that they lay and they infest the tree. And the tree can look okay, and then all of a sudden it doesn't, and it's too late.
So it's an ongoing process.
The canopy will be very thinned out, and you see birds. That's what that big tree that was down next to the Snowball Station. The birds were in there at the top of the tree, going after those tasty borers, and the tree was done. It happens pretty quickly. It's all around us, and we were, Montpelier, and now it's in Stowe, and guess what?
Sure.
So on rural roads, I know Stowe has been taking a lot of trees down there. And we did some ash removal a few years ago, and we gave away the firewood. I was away that weekend. It was a lot of fun talking about that. But it's good.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the public before we move on?
Sorry, Kane. Alyssa and I have our hands up. I would just like to say I've had the privilege of attending some of these tree board meetings, and it is absolutely amazing what this small group of volunteers has been able to accomplish for our town. It's extremely admirable, given their limited resources and time, what they've managed to do. I feel like this ask, the ash inoculation, yes, it has to be every 2 years, but the relative cost of inoculating versus taking the trees down, in a lot of cases, it makes a lot more sense to inoculate. And I'm sure they can elaborate on that more. And I just feel like this is kind of an ask that would allow us to get ahead of the problem of how to manage our trees in our town, that provides such a wonderful resource to our town and our people, instead of just trying to hastily react and hope for the best kind of thing. But I just wanted to really commend the tree board and all of the work that they've managed to do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Alyssa?
I would echo things. I'm curious about the street tree inventory, like what's an ideal cycle for that? Just very much resonating with what I'm hearing around proactive planning. And it's hard to do that when you don't have the data, but is this something that, how often would, in an ideal world, this be updated? Or once it's complete, does it feel like that would be a document you would have for the long term?
Ideally, annually, and when when trees go out to bud, and they show their colors, and show their life cycle. I mean, there's a spring checkup, there's a fall checkup, there's different times a year to evaluate a tree. So coming up with a plan that works in turn with our cycles.
Yeah, I don't think we have to hire somebody every year, though. I think maybe every 10 years or something. Or maybe we could be trained once we have the inventory in place. That's something that we could discuss as a goal.
We can work as volunteers too, a little better with some professional guidance.
That's a good question. Yeah. And I think getting the data will help us better answer that question. I would guess maybe every 10 years we do it.
And to follow up in Mike's, I would just offer, we're just trying to be fair to all of the boards and commissions. So when other groups have come to us with these types of asks, we have asked about grants or volunteer work. So understand you all have been doing that for years. And again, just acknowledging us on the select board, trying to make sure that's a fair ask across the board. But thanks again for all your work.
Yeah, I did call Urban and Community Forestry Program last week. In the past, they've had UVN students who could come out and help. They don't have anything like that going on right now. No grant work suitable. They are willing to work with somebody to train them. I take 4 or 5 hours to use the software and on site. And then work with helping interpret data as well, which you can do through the program for these bullets that I put on the phone.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Nothing is any.
Appreciate all the work you guys do.
Yeah. Right.
Sure.
Station.
Thanks so much. Moving on, revitalizing Waterbury.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for having us. I'm Lindsay Sullivan. I am the board president for Revitalizing Waterbury. And first of all, I would just like to express our ongoing gratitude for the continued support for what we do for the town of Waterbury. I was here a couple months back and asking for support from you all for the Downtown Vibrancy Grant, and happy to report that we were awarded the $25,000. One of the conditions for that grant is that it is not in replacement for town support. It is just to supplement our income. So I'm just here to ask for our annual ask, and I have a couple things to talk about. We just updated our strategic plan. We have a 3-year strategic plan that just expired, and we are working on upgrading that. Some of the things that we have a lot of focus on is our historic Waterbury. That is an ongoing maintenance phase that we've been doing for many, many years, enriching the heritage and the cultural identity of Waterbury. One of the really successful things that we did this year was we had a train day, which was had over 200 plus visitors at it. It was a brand new event that we've never done before. We're planning to do more events with the train station, celebrating that beautiful historic building. And bringing back our community ambassador program, which was slow to get started, but did have some really good legs with people coming in through either coming from the train or even just coming from downtown to ask questions about where to go in town. We also, the Vibrant Downtown, that's why we received our $25,000 from the State of Vermont Downtown Vibrancy Grant. We plan to expand and diversify the vital downtown that we have into the Route 100 corridor. That has been something on our list for many years. We also have, of course, the classic events, Music in the Alley, Arts Fest, our community volunteer fair that we did this year was very well attended. We had about 30 nonprofits come to the Brookside Elementary School, trying to support all of those volunteer efforts that we all have in all of our nonprofit worlds, and how do we spread that out? How do we find new volunteers? How do we make other groups know what's going on between these different nonprofits? We also have one of our initiatives this year or in the next couple of years is our Waterbury United, which is to integrate more of our efforts, like I said, growing up through the corridor, and also integrating with the Vermont Department of Tourism. We are currently with the Downtown Vibrancy Program. We are actually kind of a pilot program right now for Vermont Tourism to showcase a 72-hour itinerary that we've been working on in our marketing program for RW that just brings awareness to Waterbury. So we've been doing a lot of efforts there as well, really making waves in Vermont tourism, extending our branding of Waterbury, as well as Waterbury Center, and trying to kind of bring those two areas together, right? We've put a lot of effort into our downtown. We really want to put some more effort into the Route 100 corridor that has so many of our amazing businesses held on it. We also have been working with Waterbury Resiliency, the volunteer capacity, all of this community spirit. Again, that nonprofit fair we did. We are also the fiscal sponsor for CREW, the community resilience of Waterbury efforts, and that's for the flood efforts and allocating FEMA funds as needed. We are also looking into really leaning more into our reputation for fine foods and beverages, not just known around here, but also, hyper local into New England, really trying to do some kind of group marketing, getting our names out there for the food and beverage we have, but as well as being the crossroads for recreation. And we actually had Owen Seti Ducati, who was our former economic development director. He worked with an intern this summer, and in their efforts learned that the mountain biking industry is bringing in $1 million to Waterbury annually. So that is something we really want to lean into this year. So there was a letter of intent that was sent to you all about the efforts that we are making, as well as, what we're kind of looking forward into. We are looking to hire a new economic development coordinator. In the past, this has been a position that is paid for by the town. We are not looking for any kind of increase in that funding. We're still looking for the $61,650 that was allocated in 2025. We're currently hiring for an entry-level position, and we plan to keep that position level funding since last year. No increase there. The efforts of that position in this past year have been very vast, including a downtown business securing $40,000 in tax credits in support for infrastructural improvements, preparing recommendations to the Planning Commission for the new town plan, serving on the UDAG loan committee to help facilitate revolving loan funds, assisting businesses on lease opportunities, bringing new businesses in, moving a few businesses around. That happened a couple places this year with Casting Cork, the refill Mint Health that came in. That was all from our economic development director, as well as I said, that economic impact study that he did this summer. So we're currently hiring for that position and hoping to request the same $61,650 that was allocated in 2025 so that we can hire that entry-level position this year. We are also going to be hosting an economic roundtable tomorrow that would have been something under this under our economic development director, but we are going forward with it. We have a lot of interest in that as well, and we're looking to do more kind of hyper local business support like that going forward. We also are requesting a $25,000 request of municipal funds for the support of our marketing and promotion efforts for the town. A few years back, we absorbed the town tourism, the Waterbury Tourism Group, and this program has been level funded for about 2 years, and it's about a 3% increase in 2026 to support additional efforts in including that Route 100 corridor, and again, getting more knowledge out there about the town of Waterbury and not just the village and such. We also have our design team and our beautification, which is all of those garlands, the hanging baskets, a lot of those efforts that go into the banners, the holiday decor, and then also the new public spaces like Jack's Alley that was completed this year. We will be working with the town and volunteers and business owners to arrange and care for the flowers of nearly 30 planters that are on all of our historic lampposts, managing plantings at the stone planters at the entrances and center of town, coordinating with Ben & Jerry's, Cabot, and HUHS on volunteer action days. We had a really incredible action day with the Harwood High School, just cleaning up the historic train station, and very well attended. The kids were really excited to be there, and it was a great way to bring different generations together to kind of bring that kind of town pride to this younger generation. And so we're excited to strengthen that program next year and bring more of those high school students in to our efforts on volunteer days. We also arrange for, hang, and take down all the holiday decor throughout the town and seasonal decor, and of course the hanging of the banners. And so for our design, we are also requesting $10,000 in support, which is again a 3% increase. This has been level funded since 2023, same as our marketing. And we're hoping that this extension will help us to further include, again, the expansion down Route 100. How do we get garland or the beautification, that kind of vitality that we've been bringing into the village, more into the rest of Waterbury and into Guptill and the Triangle, and then on the Route 100 corridor. We will be submitting a full report to the town for 2025 in January, which will have more details on our income and expenses for our past year. And we respectfully request your support and appreciate all that you have done to support us in the past. And I'm happy to answer any questions or further elaborate on any of those. I know I just threw a lot of information at you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
Lindsay, you mentioned, and I've seen the figure before from Bowen, about $1 million brought into the community from mountain biking. How does that compare to Kingdom Trails over in the Kingdom?
I don't know the answer to that, and there is the report was done by a UVM intern and our economic development director, and I don't know the answer to that, but it was the first of this kind of impact study that really just showcased that mountain biking, as we all knew that mountain biking was important in this town, but we didn't realize that it's contributing that $1 million to our local economy annually. So it just feels like a missed opportunity for us to not lean into, but I don't know comparison to other places. I'm happy to find out if I can find it.
That'd be great, because I know Burke, it's a real driver to their whole economic, and I think, we do see, it's like 15 years ago, you rarely saw you saw a few mountain bikers around, but now you see a lot, so it is a good driver. So it's just really interesting to see how other mountain bike trail associations, what impact it has on those communities.
Yeah, absolutely. And we are doing some there's a pathways program that is happening that is trying to kind of upgrade a bunch of these pathways, a bunch of the walking and biking pathways, which does lean into the like connection of the Route 100 corridor to the village. How can we make those pathways a little bit more accessible to everybody? What kind of funding should we be putting into our bike paths? Like that sort of thing, I think is really important. We are really trying to be a kind of convener for other places. So for a lot of the projects that we have going forward, we are trying to lean into the other nonprofits in the area, like with WADA for the biking, for example. And really trying to utilize the amazing knowledge we have, right? And make all of these programs work better. But we do have a lot of efforts going into outdoor rec and pathways. Roger and I are also sitting on the advisory and for the Better Connections conversation. So we are really trying to work on those kind of pathways, as well as not just the tourism and the retail side of Waterbury.
I just want to go on record that I'm accusing myself both from voting and participating in this discussion due to the conflict of interest earlier this year. I took the position of executive director of Revitalizing Waterbury, and I continue to serve on the select board.
Any other questions from the board? No? Okay. So thank you for coming before us today. I'm just trying to.
One quick question. I was trying to answer this.
I would direct your.
Okay, direct it to Lindsay.
Yeah.
The 3%, how did you come up with that 3% number?
Based on the projects that we're trying to do and the lack of increase that we have asked for in those areas, the marketing. So first of all, I can tell you for the beautification efforts, one of the things that was a huge cost this year was watering all of the baskets. There are a lot of efforts that go into it, but from our end that are volunteer based, but the watering of the baskets was expensive, and the hanging of the garland, like there are certain aspects of it that we have been kind of covering and that are now liability wise not worth it, right? Putting volunteers up on ladders to hang garland is not something that we have the insurance to cover. So that one needed that increase because we have just seen an increase in our garlands are 10 years old. Some of those will need to be replaced. As I said, not all of those efforts can be done by volunteer anymore. So those are costing us funds. And then with the marketing and promotion efforts, we've really been not spending a lot on marketing and really trying to put as much of our funds as we can towards community efforts. However, what we're seeing now is people don't know what we do. People don't know all of the efforts that Revitalizing Waterbury does. So one of the big things we do need that we need this extra funding for is to market ourselves so people know what we're doing, so they will support us, so that it's not all falling on the town, because all of our funding comes from our memberships, our sponsorships, our and then also of course from this ask to the town. But one of the things that will make us more effective is if people know what we do. And so with those marketing and promotion efforts and that 3% increase there, which again, has been level funded for 2 years, we think that we can make a huge impact, not just on spreading the word of what Revitalizing Waterbury does, but also by offering co-op ads to a bunch of the businesses in town, and being able to kind of help fund some of these smaller businesses having a bigger impact on their marketing. Ben and Jerry's does not need us for marketing, but Salt and Rind and Bridgeside Books, they would really benefit. Maybe they would really benefit from a big spread that showcases Waterbury. So we're trying to do more of those efforts that are bringing in kind of the New England and the Vermont tourism, and how do we make people who are coming here for Ben and Jerry's, how do we make them drive into the village? And people who are coming here for the village, how do we make them continue driving up Route 100? And I think those efforts will be showcased in the marketing and promotion efforts that we have on our list going forward.
I'll ask a question. It's a two-parter, so if anyone on the board has a question, I suggest asking it first. Alyssa?
Hi, Lindsay. Thanks for this.
Hey, Alyssa.
I'm curious if the board could just get a breakdown of RW's financials and percentage of contributions from those different sources you mentioned. I know in the past, there's sometimes been a great pie chart in terms of the fact that, taxpayers are getting, contributing to the economic development position and some of this beautification, but we're essentially getting a lot more bang from our buck in terms of outcomes and how much effort is supported. So is that something you'd be able to provide?
Yeah, I mean, we won't have our financials for this year, our final financials till 2025, but, or excuse me, until January for 2025. But would you like, yes, and we're happy to be as transparent as we can with our information for sure. But yes, we can get you something.
Yes.
Do you want to, when would you like to see, up until the fourth quarter, like the first 3 quarters of the year, or are you trying to look,
I think that'd be great. I think 2024, if hopefully you can remind, I've seen this in the past, so I was hoping it wasn't a newer, different ask, but I think seeing 2024 and seeing the first 3 quarters would be good. Again, I want to be able to answer if someone from the public is saying like, wow, this is a lot of funding for an organization, recognizing that it's a portion, but far from your whole budget, and just understand how it plays into that.
Totally. And I will say with those, the 3% increase is just for the marketing and the beautification efforts. So actually overall, it's more like a 2% increase for the overall ask. But yes, we can certainly give you a layout of how our funding comes in, because most of our funding is external from this funding. Yes.
Thank you, Lindsay. All right, so my question is, right, I'm gonna ask a question. So totals with last year's allocation 61,650, on top 25,000, another request to allocate the same amount that we allocated last year, plus 25,000, plus another 10, it's $96,650 total allocation. For 26, fiscal year 26?
Yeah. So I just, these are just broken out into 3 sections. The 61,650 is for the economic development coordinator's position, which is funded by the town. The other 25,000 and 10,000 are money that we ask for, usually. I mean, every year, like we do ask for that. It's not an additional 35,000 from last year.
I was just trying to get the total taxpayer expense.
Totally. Yep.
And a follow-up question to that is, as I understand it, part of Revitalize Waterbury's job is to be a chamber of commerce, essentially, right?
Sort of. Yep. Sort of. But yeah.
Yes and no, but also, and so I guess as far as economic vitality is concerned, do you feel on the board at Revitalize Waterbury that during the year 2025, Waterbury has been more or less economically, has our economic vitality increased or decreased in the year 2025?
I mean, I think it's increased. I've seen the businesses that have come into our town in the last year since that Owen brought in. I mean, the Mint Health that moved in, the Rise Up Refill that moved in. I see a lot of vitality that is happening in our town. I see a lot of Owen did a fabulous job of bringing in new businesses, constantly cycling businesses who are unhappy with their spaces. The reason why the shed, the town shed that's been in disrepair for decades, that's right behind Bidwell Lane, the reason that is under construction right now is because of the economic development director's efforts and RW's efforts. There is a reason why that is directly tied to us. And I think that there's a huge amount of vitality that comes into the town that people don't even see from the efforts of not just the economic development director, but also I mean the board, the volunteers. We have an incredible group of people that keep this organization going with only 2.5 paid employees, and the rest is all volunteer effort. We actually hosted all of the designated downtowns of Vermont in September, and they all walked around our town looking for suggestions of how to increase the vitality, how to make Waterbury a better space, what they think we're missing. And honestly, 99.9% of them said, I'm very jealous. I know notes. You guys are nailing it. How do we do what you guys are doing? The way that we have run this program, I think, is extremely impactful. And I think our support of other community efforts is also something that is hard to measure, but I know is very strong, the impact that we have in convening these other community efforts.
I'm going to do one last question from the board before I turn it over to the public. I see Amy's got her hand up. Is there anyone? All right. So I'll start with Amy. We'll go out of the computer and into real life. Amy.
I do, yeah, thank you. And thanks for the update. I appreciate it. This seems like this is my first full year of paying attention to the entire cycle, so it's helpful. I do recognize there's been a lot of progress generated, and I guess use the word vitality, where revitalizing Waterbury has been the driver. I do have some other questions relative to understanding not just the revenue. Well, I know there's some question out there about how that revenue for mountain biking, for example, was calculated. That would be helpful to get that more clarified. But I'm also more interested about more of a balanced understanding. So when I think about impact and I hear comments like driving more and more tourism, that gives me a little cringe because as a local resident, it's quite burdensome as it currently sits today. So I wanted to have a better sense of how, and not necessarily tonight, but this question is a little bit more for the select board too, to ask, how do we really assess the implications of more? And what does that mean for us? Whether it means roads, whether it means congestions on traffic, whether it means you can't get a place in a restaurant, or there's lots of different implications, but I haven't ever seen that kind of analysis. I typically just see a full forest, here's what the revenue is going to bring. But I know that we equally find ourselves in town conversations struggling with road repairs and other costs that we have to consider because of these growth in certain areas. So it's a little bit for RW and it's a little bit for the select board as well in terms of my comment and question.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, so when I first started on the board a couple years back, we did have some huge efforts towards Vermont tourism. We had absorbed the Waterbury tourism group. And a lot of our efforts in the last, it's a great question. I totally agree with you. It's in the last maybe 2 years, I think a lot of our efforts for the marketing team have not been about how do we get more people to come here as tourists, but how do we get people to know who we are and what we do? Because what we do, it does directly affect our local residents a lot. And that was why we brought back the community fair last year and the train day. Like we are really trying to put efforts into when I say tourism, like hyper local tourism. How do we get people from Montpelier to come and shop here the way that we go to Montpelier to shop? How do we get people from Stowe to come here and I know that doesn't fully answer your question, but and we're not all about just tourism. We want to, one of our big efforts right now, this past year was the community fair. We plan to continue that event. Another big effort we have is how do we promote and help out the businesses? Because yes, we are kind of a chamber of commerce, although we're not technically, but we are a kind of membership, sponsorship based business group. We have been talking about how do we reach out to our businesses that rely on local use, you know, the dentists, the chiropractors, the health facility, the, again, Rise Up Refill. How do we support those businesses and not just the ones that tourists are coming for, not just the restaurants and the little shops that have the gifts, but like the businesses that are here to serve the locals. We do put a lot of effort into those businesses as well. So I don't want you to think that RW is only strictly tourism. We do some of that to get the word out. Honestly, more of our tourism efforts are how do we highlight our smaller businesses that maybe can't afford a big marketing campaign that's like a New England marketing campaign? How do we support them in a New England marketing campaign while still supporting our local commerce for hyper locals like yourself? But I agree with you. There is issues there, right? The tourism thing is a thing.
Yes, yes, it is. Thanks. Select board, it would be great to hear from you folks at some point.
Amy, I'm gonna move on to Valerie. She's got some questions.
I just have one, Valerie Rogers. So I've been just doing a little research on revitalizing Waterbury and the relationship with the town. So my question is about the $61,000 salary for the executive director, economic development coordinator. From what I read, it's a hybrid position. Does that mean that the town pays half of his salary? Or I read that it's a hybrid position and that we aren't the only ones who contribute to the salary. And maybe you can't answer that.
They are under our benefit program, but the salary is covered by the state, by the town. Am I wrong in that, Roger? I'm pretty sure I'm correct in that's how that, I know that you're recusing yourself, but it's just that one position. The economic development director used to be employed by the town and then again was absorbed by Revitalizing Waterbury because there was redundancy. The executive director is 100% paid by RW. The economic development director, one of the agreements that was made with this town when we absorbed that position was that the salary would continue to be covered by the town, but the benefits and the direction would come from RW.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions from the board? All right, I'll ask one last one. Speaking for myself, not as person chairing this meeting right now. You mentioned doing co-op advertisements with local businesses. And this is going to tie in sort of to a secondary question. I think a lot of folks who are struggling to put food on their table or roofs over their heads would understand why the town allocating $96,000 to partially pay for local businesses' advertisements does them any good. Do you want to speak on Revitalizing Waterbury's participation with the housing task force?
I have not served on the housing task force. I will be honest about that. Our board is very much split up into, like, we each are in charge of different committees, and that is not one that I have sat on. But we do have huge efforts. I understand what you're saying about the people not wanting to pay for co-op ads. We're not asking for $25,000 to pay for co-op ads at all. We're at, like, that's not where that would go. I think there's some brand update that we want to do that some of that funding would go towards. But there's also, again, kind of creating this like one Waterbury image that that has been missing, that keeps the town kind of divided at the moment, at least from our perspective. That the housing task force, yes, we have been involved in the housing task force, and it's so interesting. The tourism, I understand the tourism side and the marketing side that's the forward facing side. There is so much more that we do outside of those two efforts that I feel like, disregarding the $40,000 in tax credits that Owen was able to get for a business, the downtown business last year in infrastructural improvements. I think there's just other efforts that this money is going towards than just like trying to get tourists in here to buy things. That's not at all what we're trying to do. We have Crew, who is doing the flood financing. I mean, there's a lot of other efforts than just highlighting the businesses in town and trying to market and do co-op ads. Like that's like a little blip in our pool, I feel. I can get you more information about the housing efforts, but I feel like being hung up on the tourism side of things and thinking that this $35,000 is going to go towards tourism when we have also been fiscally sponsoring the Crew flood mitigation. There's a lot of other efforts that we do in town that have nothing to do with tourism and have nothing to do.
Well, that's sort of where I was
Yeah.
handling that question.
Yeah,
Was
okay.
just a showcase of the benefit of what RW's been up to outside of that forward facing.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we've got like all of the signage and we help with tax credits. We help with the UDAG loans. We help with, sorry, I'm just going through a list of a million things. Property tax exemptions. There's all of these efforts that our economic development director has put towards our small businesses, our hyper local businesses, in trying to give them their tax credits that they deserve and trying to get them the funding that they need, that I think is really important to our town and has huge efforts that are kind of unsung. It's not just the Jack's Alley and the it's not just the pretty forward facing stuff. We have huge efforts and honestly this our business roundtable tomorrow is a lot of people who are hyper local businesses that are trying to tell us what they need. That's what we're here for, is to really say what do these businesses need, what does our community need, how do we put our best foot forward to support our community efforts.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah.
A question for Alyssa. Is this something that we plan on voting on today or something that we're putting on to another meeting?
Speaking for myself, I will say we had update listed next to both Tree Board and RW, and they did both become funding requests. Our next item is town meetings and budget development. So I would say I would take tonight as informational in both cases, and we can address budgeting as we outline on the schedule next.
Okay, thank you. All right. Is there anything else revolving around revitalizing Waterbury in that update? Board? Nope. All right. Thank you so much, Lindsay.
Thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
All right, moving on. We have town meeting day budget development schedule. Tom, I'm going to let you take this for a minute.
Sure. I'm sorry, folks. The owl is not pivoting for whatever reason, so you don't get to look at my beautiful face. Hopefully, I'm coming through. So this schedule is, folks who are listening, and this is all up on the website, but the schedule was modified slightly after the last conversation. So the first, December 1st does remain a budget work session, but understand that's also a select board regular meeting. And so the intent would be to get through what we can. But then the 7th, which is a Sunday, would be a in essence, a long meeting day for the focus on the budget where staff would come in for their appropriate times to review them. And then the 15th, which would be the next regular meeting, would also be another budget work session. As needed, not as needed because we're still in thick of it, but understand it's also a regular meeting, and so a lot will be on the agenda. And then as we move into December 22nd and the 1st, and then January 5th, the outstanding items that we haven't gotten to, along with the Have Your Say Day presentation. And I want to say that I will have a draft of everything to the board prior to the Monday, December 1st meeting. So whatever decisions you're making and debating, you'll have some context of the big picture. And then the final dates on the schedule are just the statutory deadlines for getting things to the town clerk and for the select board to finalize and get a warning published. So really the big change from the last meeting was just really ironing out the Sunday and making sure that's on the calendar for us all. Also want to highlight the January 10th, which is a Saturday. I have scheduled the Legion. If there's an intent to do that, I know there's been some discussion about whether or not we still call it Have Your Say Day. Is it now something different? But nonetheless, the budget preview is that day is scheduled with the Legion, and then for the 12th, my proposal to you is because the participation last year at the Grange wasn't a huge number, and so my inclination, my recommendation is to simply use this room for that meeting. This is not my recollection. I didn't check the meeting minutes, but my recollection of the Grange is we probably had 10 or 12 people, enough that we could accommodate folks here. So that's the proposed schedule as revised, for input from last meeting. But I also want to say that I took a lot of notes. I think I incorporated everything, but if I didn't get it correct, that's why we're here. I have to edit it in real time.
Before I ask questions, any questions from the board?
Well, I believe that one of the reasons for holding it at the Grange was to make it more accessible to folks in Waterbury Center. But I'm not sure that had the intended effect, and that if we do have access online, that serves really much of the same purpose. So assessment of having to do it up at the Grange necessarily again this year.
Lisa?
Thanks, Tom, for updating this. I think it's great to have this in one place. A couple notes. I just wanted to check with Tom and the board and my own note taking two on December 22nd versus 29th. I'm just noting December 22nd is a fourth Monday, I think, if I'm right. So again, that can be our holdover date. I just want to flag for folks. I don't think that's a regular meeting one, nor is January 12th. We may have also said the 29th, which was the fifth Monday. I'm amenable to any outcome, but just want to make sure we all intentionally choose that tonight. I'm wondering if we add the word funding petitions due to town clerk, because I think one of the goals of this document and agenda item is to have a clear pathway for folks who want to either submit funding requests from a board or commission, which we've heard here tonight, but also be clear and transparent about folks also having the option to submit petitions directly to the clerk for inclusion on the warning. Those could also go to the select board first, but I feel like it would be worthwhile for us to just talk about those timing. And then the other piece I think we haven't discussed is outreach to boards and committees. Again, we had two impromptu tonight that showed up as funding requests, but based on our conversation tonight, I feel like we want to have clear guidance on when we're inviting folks, when we're requesting budget requests from committees, just so that we can share back to folks. Those are kind of non sequitur questions, so I'm happy to pause, Tori, if you want to go, if you have something more concrete.
No, you're fine. I was just going to say my recollection is that we opted to just skip the 29th as a meeting entirely because I think we had decided that everybody checks out in between.
That was my recollection too. That's how I remember it, is that we just didn't put the grant 29.
Other than that, I'm in full agreement with everything you said, Elsa.
Yeah, we should figure out a date for committees and funding requests from committees. Whichever one works best. I mean, I kind of see that as like, we should probably do that sooner rather than later. But I'll take any.
December 1st.
Is December 1st amenable to the rest of the board to listen to hear committees and possible funding requests?
Yeah, I also think it's important that we get it in before December 7th, considering that's like marathon day. But go ahead, Alyssa.
Yeah, I think that's fine, but I think some boards and committees might not have, meetings before then in terms of wanting to consult with folks. I'm wondering if, based on tonight's conversation, we would ask Tom tomorrow to email the chairs of boards and committees that get funding from the town, share in particular our December work schedule, Monday, December 1st, Sunday, December 7th, and Monday, December 15th, noting that the earlier things are in, the more time we have to consider, but those are 3 available dates folks could come to present. I'm also wondering about just that also being timing to share for folks who want to ask the select board to include funding petitions. Obviously, they have until January 15th to submit them, but I know there's been some conversation about should groups come to the select board with a request for the budget as opposed to just doing it on their own. I feel like that gives them a month of lead time. If they came to us December 15th, we said, we're not going to include that in the budget, but you're still welcome to petition. They would still have 30 days to get signatures. But yeah, my proposal would be, given the timing, we should offer not just the 1st and the 7th, but maybe note that those are preferred. But I defer to Tom's staff input on if that's realistic. We have a number, but not a enormous number in terms of figuring that out.
Any other notes from the board on that? Sound good to everyone? All right, so the dates were the 1st, 7th, and 15th. Will you?
I'll reach out to everyone.
James. That settles that. What was the? Alyssa, you had another thing, another suggestion that wasn't committees. I failed to write down.
I'm just noting if we update this schedule based on our discussion tonight, I'm hearing in agreement. One note was just to note funding petitions due to town clerk Thursday, January 15th. And again, this is a made up deadline, so we don't need to do this, but we could also suggest if folks want to approach the select board with a specific funding request, doing so before Monday, December 15th would give them time if we were to not include something in the budget to, again, still petition to have it on with giving themselves a month. That's not something that's been done in the past. I'm just naming, I think we're trying to create a clear roadmap because there hasn't always been one outside of statute deadline. So that's just my thought on working deadline. I'm also curious folks' perspective on the Have Your Say Day name. Tom said it, and I think someone else said they got a question too. Obviously, last year it was more intensive, but again, I think just another opportunity for the public to weigh in on the budget, both before town meeting day and before it's warned, in case there was something substantial enough we wanted to change what we put in the warning. I have no strong feelings either way on the name, but didn't know for clarity if it was worth any changes.
We want to call it, come keep our budget day. I do think it's a bit silly. I've heard multiple comments from citizens of Waterbury about sort of the uselessness of Have Your Say Day when we're just having town meeting. So we're gonna have the day. I just call it coming pie and look at our budget day.
I like what you said before, budget preview day.
Yeah, that's what I said. Budget preview.
That's
day.
what it is.
Tori, you have any suggestions?
Clever names is not my, actually. I feel like why we said just one day, but I could be, but budget pie day sounds great.
Budget preview and pie day. Sounds great. Alyssa, do you have any objections to budget preview and pie day? Public?
For clarification, it should not be actual pie day. It should just be budget preview day. I don't want to mess up with real pie day in March.
So last year I had sent something, or maybe I sent it to you guys, saying that when I saw that name, I felt this, if I didn't know what it was, I would have gone right past it thinking it was some kid event that I didn't want to do it. So I felt like it needed to be more defined about what the meeting's about. Maybe not just the budget, because there was a lot of things brought up there that had to do with town meeting, and I feel like there has to be some kind of like pre-town meeting or something that, and then in the details, say something, but the headline on it needs to be something a little bit more definitive of what is going on.
Yeah, well, just first of all, acknowledge that the Have Your Say Day was lifted directly from Duxbury because we were proposing to look at the system that Duxbury had put in place for their town meeting. So I think we can dispense with that one. I would suggest budget adjustment day, because I think that's really what this is about, is that we present the budget and we invite the public in to make to propose adjustments to it based on ideas and priorities they may have.
That's so adult and boring.
Well, I don't know. That's what would have brought Sandy in.
Yeah, with that one.
Does anyone on the board stand in opposition of budget adjustment day? You know what? I'll even entertain a motion.
I make a motion to call January 10th budget adjustment day.
All right, moved and seconded. Discussion.
Oh.
Hearing none. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? All right, it passes. Now officially known as budget adjustment day.
It's like the Gulf of America and how the calendars will change. Officially, we'll say this.
Any calendar change in Waterbury. We're intending budget adjustment day. Is that it? Do you have
Is
any?
that including the 12th too? Are you having 2 days or just one?
Well, the motion was just for the one day. But I think it would probably behoove us to call the other one also budget adjustment day. Well, we already passed.
I think you can have, well, one budget adjustment day. The following meeting is when we take those adjustments and then codify them into.
Yes, budget adjustment day. I think we can include the 12th in that motion. No,
I have a /12 kind of slipped in there,
Okay.
so
it's crazy how that is.
I know, right?
All right. Is there anything else outside of this calendar that need to be discussed? Or schedule? This is a blitz. A lot of Mondays. Thursdays. That moves us on. Yep. Moving on to Stanley Watson update.
I can give the update here. Let me just start by just reminding folks a little bit of history. The Stanley Watson site was agreed, the initial agreement to sell that property to the town came out of the 2023 legislative session. It took quite a long time for that legal approval by the legislature of the governor to become a purchase and sale. That is now in place. Options to extend, so the town has the right to buy that from the state of Vermont for $40,000. Recently, this fall, we put out an RFQ. So not an RFP, but an RFQ, request for qualifications, trying to solicit interest from developers. That I thought was pretty well advertised in a number of places, all of which are prominent for, I think, the development committee to look at. Perhaps the most prominent one being the listserv, Vermont Development Listserv, that's run by Development Waterbury, which is a commercial real estate firm in this area. We did receive a response. Just want to talk about a couple of questions that have arisen since then where we're at. So where we're at now is the process of developing an agreement. And people have asked, what exactly is that agreement? And that agreement will be public when it's before the select board. But in essence, that agreement is our attempt to take what was in the RFQ and the response, and to the extent we can provide specificity to include all the specificity in the agreement. So we have a good understanding of what we want, what the developer will provide. And to the extent possible, the developer then has requested an exclusivity period, which in essence means that the town would not have the ability to market the site to another developer while they're studying the property, while they're doing their own analysis, while they're doing the market study, while they're doing permitting. So this agreement is really what I would classify as a pre-development agreement.
Tom, can you please speak up? I'm sorry, I would say it in person if I was in the room. It's hard to hear you online. Thank you.
Sorry. So
use that barrel and top voice.
So we are at really the pre-development agreement stage. And that pre-development agreement is going to take some time to iron out before it sees the public light of day, because it is a relatively complex agreement. And again, I've said this before, there's not necessarily a boilerplate model for these things. So we've got to work on this with respective counsel for both parties. And so that will be before the select board in public when we believe it's finalized. And that is an item that is worthy of executive session. And people have asked about next steps. Well, if the select board does not agree on anything, there is no next step. We are essentially back to square one. And so the select board certainly has no obligation to approve anything at this stage. I just want to make that clear. A couple other questions have come up regarding the development plans and the conceptual materials. So we did receive some conceptual materials which were not shared with the public at the meeting at the fire station and have not been put on our website. I'm not going to cite the specific sections of Vermont law, but there's a couple of provisions in law that pertain to trade secrets and that pertain to agreements that have not formally been proposed. So they're not, for example, at the DRB stage of review. And so that's why those materials have not been shared to date. I also want to specify that conceptual materials are just that. This project has to go before the town's development review board, and it would undergo. It is in the town's design review district, so design is part of the project. This project also has to go before the state historic. It is in the historic preservation area. Never mind Act 250, never mind other potential permitting. And so I just want to stress that even what the select board is seeing is highly conceptual at this stage, because there's a long process here involving a number of parties, including the town's DRB, as to how the final look and feel of the building and the design would be. So I just want to clarify that, because so often, early in the process, a developer or municipality would put out sketch drawings. But that's what they are, they're sketch drawings, and we're in essence at that stage. And so I wouldn't, even if they were released, I wouldn't tell you those sketch drawings are possible, they are far from it. So I just want to make that clear. Other questions came up at the meeting at the fire department and more recently about the town's decision to engage in this process with one developer, given there was just one response. So the first thing I want to say is, again, there is no formal agreement with any party. And until there is, the town is simply exploring its options. The second piece I would say is, again, I believe the RFQ was well advertised. I also believe there's simply not a exhaustive list of developers that could bid on this project. It's a pretty large scale project by Vermont standards, and so the average contractor obviously wouldn't have the capability of doing this work, especially given it is in the floodplain. And so from that perspective, your list gets fairly small fairly quick. The other piece I would add is the developer that did bid has a demonstrated history of working with affordable housing partners. And one of the criteria in the RFP was to strive to get some affordable housing built. So I think that's also another good reason. So I think there's a number of good, valid reasons to move forward with one developer, should the select board choose to do so. But again, that is a select board decision. And that agreement has not been signed by anyone as yet. And so we are still at the exploratory stage. And the select board, for any reason at this point, has complete freedom to say, no, we want to step back and do the process differently. So I just want to clarify those things, and that's the update. I am hopeful that that pre-development agreement that I referenced will be before the select board for their internal review in final form in 2 weeks is my hope. That may put a second on time on the calendar, but roughly December 1st would be my hope that we do the select board. But that review would be an executive session, and if in fact there is further modifications that would be requested, then the agreement will not get public at that. So that's my update. Hopefully that clarifies a few things for the community.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions from the board?
So I know it's just Waterbury, Stanley Watson Coalition that's been formed. They copied all the select board members. And they asked for a response within 10 days, and I know we're still within that 10 days. Have you gotten back to them, or you plan on getting back to them? Because you just addressed a lot of things.
I will get back to them, but I want the response to make sure it is entirely comprehensive. So, for example, I just talked about the law and some exceptions to public records. And I don't know those citations offhand, but my response will include those citations. So I want to make sure I'm getting a complete response to all of them.
Roger.
At the meeting in the fire station, there were people both for and against this development. And a couple of concerns that were brought up were, one, building in the floodplain and displacing floodwater would increase the risk for other homeowners, adjacent homeowners. Another was that this could contribute to increased traffic, specifically on Manor Street and Park Row. Do we have any you have any response to those concerns at this point?
Yeah, first off, I think they're entirely valid concerns. Secondly, that's what permit reviews are for. That's what the select board review is for, even the redevelopment agreement. And so I think those are valid, and I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that those concerns hear the light of day through these processes, and that they're given due consideration. And if there's challenges, if there's solutions, that we work towards them.
Anyone else on the board? Public?
I just want to clarify, so you said that it's going to be up to the board as far as what the next step is. So because of the timing of this, can the select board decide it should be put before the voters and no decision made without voting? Is that something that the select board can choose to decide?
My understanding is the select board can, in essence, do that on any issue.
Okay. All right, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to speak from my personal position, not as the person chairing this meeting. This town needs housing. I understand that there's a league of concerned citizens who founded the website. I'd like to see no project here. What I will say is we don't have answers yet for some of the questions that are being asked by this league of concerned citizens. And it's totally reasonable, and most of their questions are totally reasonable. But we will not have answers until studies are done. And we will not have answers unless we take another step towards this project. As Tom mentioned, the permitting process, and something I am and will continue to be unwilling to do is smother this project in the cradle before we have any of those answers. And that's going to be my continued position on this. So anyone else on the select board? Anyone else in public have anything to say about this before we move on? All right, let's move on. Rental registry update, man, we're just all the hits tonight.
So I wrote a late short memo I put on the website here. I had heard from a few folks that the registry wasn't working, which I took to be true. I went ahead on Friday and registered town hall as a dummy unit, and worked fine for me as the user. So the registry is working. The exception is condominiums. So behind the scenes, the registry ties itself to the same data set that you see when you go on our website. If you go on the tax mapping side of our website, so each parcel in our system has a tax parcel ID and a tax map ID. Condominiums are difficult because there's multiple units that share that ID. So when an owner goes to register, it confuses the system. So our vendor is aware of the problem, and our vendor is hopefully, I think, working towards a fix. Who's our IT consultant is also agreed to offer services as a volunteer, which is great because Bob's a techie, and this is really a technical solution that we need. So condos aside, as of this morning, we have 205 rental units registered, but that includes 660 bedrooms, obviously. One bedroom. So that's our data set. I see Joe Camerata online, and I'm going to put him on the spot because I believe the Housing Task Force estimated the number of short-term rentals, and that number is short-term. So I believe the Housing Task Force estimated the number of short-term rentals, and I was hoping Joe could see how close we are to their estimate.
We didn't, I mean, the task force did not estimate. There's actually information on housingdata.org with regards to the number of short-term rentals in every town. And for Waterbury, the last number that we saw was 180. So 180 short-term rentals. And I believe that was based on September's data. It fluctuates on a monthly basis. So Tom, I didn't quite hear, what was the number that you had?
205.
205. So, right. Now, it could mean that, when I say 180 for September, what that means was there was 180 active short-term rentals. It also means that 180 are what's called full living units, meaning it's not just a room in somebody's house. They actually have their own bathroom and kitchen facilities. So there's probably going to be some discrepancy, but I mean, yeah, if you're at 205 and what housing.org is telling us is at 180, that's actually a good estimate.
We may have reasonably good data set at this point.
Sorry?
So we might have pretty good data set at this point.
So is the 205 all rentals or just short-term rentals?
Right now, yes, for short term. So I'm hoping that's correct.
There's a lot of vagary in the housing. Short-term rentals, so
yeah,
big plus and minus.
This seems to come right in the ballpark. So if the housing data is saying 180 and this is saying 205, we're still right in the ballpark.
My estimate from the start was that we would have better compliance with short-term rental. Short-term rental association was pretty helpful in keeping up their members. It appears that's what's happening.
Any comments or questions from the board? Melissa?
I want to say in fairness to Joe, when on Saturday he said, I see this is on the agenda, I said, I know it's on the housing task force agenda for Thursday. So I just wanted to flag that this was just an update because we had these kind of imminent concerns on if the registry is working, but I would just offer that for folks interested in a deeper dive, particularly on the short-term rental side. Myself and Billy Vigdor from the Planning Commission both spent all day 2 Saturdays ago at Lake Maury talking with other towns and state officials about short-term rentals. So we'll be sharing more about that in more detail on Thursday at the Housing Task Force for anyone interested.
So I don't foresee anything that has to do with this, but I think there was whispers about being right around 200. Longer before there, so this number doesn't come as a shock to me at all. I'm curious about the bedrooms number though. Out of 205 units, we have 660 bedrooms. Is that, or is that some separate number?
That's what the data is telling us as of right now.
Any questions from the public? Any hands online? Oh, Joe. Yes.
I have a question for Tom real quick. Tom, about a couple of months ago, we had drafted some analysis that we were looking for from the vendor that would begin to tell us how those short-term rentals are impacting our housing stock. Do you have any update on when that information could be available to us?
Not as of today.
All right.
All right, and Mary Cohen?
Hi, yes. Are you only giving numbers, Tom, about the short-term rentals? I'm curious about how many long-term rentals have been registered.
The data I requested was on short term. So I'm hoping there's the separate data set on long term, but the information I have before me today was 205 on the short term.
Oh, okay. Okay. I read the agenda item incorrectly because it said rental registry. So I thought we'd hear data on both long-term and short-term. I think that would be good data to put out to the public because it's not just about short-term rentals. in my mind, to make this town vibrant and accessible.
The board doesn't have any other comments.
Sorry, I just have a quick question. It doesn't say what, if any of those short-term rentals are owner occupied, that maybe they rent out once or twice a year.
Didn't go that far.
I'll make a request, as Stowe just got some feisty data about their short rentals. We see how many are owned by folks with out of town mailing addresses. Get that information. If no one has anything else, we will move on. Select board and municipal manager updates. We'll start with myself. I have no updates. Fine.
I'm meeting with the Conservation Commission tomorrow, so not a lot of updates. The only other thing, I went to the Planning Commission meeting on their tiered approach. I thought it was very interesting. If any of you get a chance, you might want to tune in, check out the meeting. That's it.
The Recreation Committee has put out a survey to 20 different organizations involved with recreational trail development around town. And that should be completed by the next meeting, which is next Tuesday.
Melissa?
I've shared. No, I went to the same planning commission meeting that Mike alluded to, which had both the flood resiliency chapter of the town plan and also conservation and land use, I believe. And just would echo definitely a robust conversation, in particular to flag for the board around potential conservation goals, if that's something the town wants to move forward with, like what incentives are in place for landowners, and just flood resiliency generally. And then, as I mentioned, went to the short-term rental retreat, and we'll share more about that at the Housing Task Force meeting on Thursday. I guess the two high-level takeaways I would flag for the board, they did have some of the vendors there on the compliance side, so interested to dig more into the data. And again, whether that's something we need or don't, which feels like it's an outstanding question. They also had folks from the state, from fire safety and food and beverage and the tax department. So also lots of interesting data from those folks, and those slideshows are publicly available, so I can share those with anyone who's interested in diving into the weeds. That's all I have.
Corey?
No, the tree board kind of did my updates for me, so all set.
All righty, with that, we are way ahead of schedule. Next item is to review agenda items for the next meeting.
Kane, does Tom have anything to add? Since you are
Oh, yeah,
ahead of schedule.
I can add a couple things. There's an internal group of stakeholders along with a consultant that works for us. We have monthly flood roundtable meetings to try to advance the projects we want to accomplish. There's a pot of funds we call QUISP, Clean Water Service Provider Funds, that are overseen by Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. Potentially $1 million there that could be applied to Randall Meadow. QUISP funds are not focused on flood relief, but phosphorus reduction. And their preferred projects are fully designed and engineered, because the phosphorus reduction credits are all calculations, and so they're reluctant to fund a project that's not fully designed, because they don't want the final design to get you less phosphorus reduction than the preliminary design. That's understandable. So we're gonna delve into that a little bit more, and don't be shocked if I come to you with a funding request related to that at some point in the next few months. Other piece I just wanna note, federal government is back open, but I think we all don't have a great feeling about our federal FEMA grant application. Waiting to hear about the CDBG disaster relief funds we applied for, but we asked for $4.25 million, and those are really highly competitive funds. The pot of funds we requested for our program is vastly overprescribed. So something to consider, and we are early in the process, but something to consider would be perhaps a town meeting day conversation about Randall Meadow. I'm not suggesting a bond vote to do the project, but it feels like to me we might be advancing towards requesting funds to fully design and engineer the project. That would certainly put us in a good position to get QuIS funds. Hopefully by the time we have a more detailed conversation, we've got some clarity on the grants we've applied for. But this feels like a project where even if the select board and all the members of the audience told me right now that they want to pay for this, there's so much ambiguity in that budget because it's all based on trucking costs. So if we fully design and engineer as part of that process, we are finding local places to move the dirt. We are finding all the environmental issues. We are doing all that. So we would be in a position where any future bond will be very well informed compared to where we are today. So just something to think about perhaps for budget conversations. Second thing is more of a fun thing, and I happen to have a member of the Historical Society here. But they have a meeting on Wednesday. So a complaint I've heard for 3 years from staff with planning and zoning is that the hallway is a really noisy place to work. So we're having an internal conversation at this point about perhaps moving the desk from the hallway into the back part of Dr. James' office, in that back area, and swapping space with the Historical Society. So give staff a little bit more of a quiet back room. So I want to be clear, we're talking about spending a little bit of time and moving internally. We're not talking about knocking down walls or building walls or adding doors. We're just talking about doing a little bit of a switcheroo that might make sense for all of us. So if the Historical Society has no interest, then it may end there, but if they have an interest, staff seem pretty excited about it. So it may just happen.
The Historical Society have veto privileges to people from over in that area.
I think as a technical matter, it's a town's building. But I think from a practical perspective, yeah, they have veto privileges. At least as far as I'm concerned. If it was your desire to move, I'd leave that up to you to negotiate.
I don't know what it is.
I think from their perspective, they're getting a more visible space.
Yeah.
But they are moving outside of the older part of the building. So they might not love that. They're partially moving out of the older part of the building.
Only on the first floor.
So it'll be a fun conversation.
It is a historic building, so I think between the Historic Society and the State Historic Preservation.
They might. All right, is that all our updates? Sure.
Can you give an update on the applicants for the zoning administrator and the ethics position?
So the zoning administrator, really, some of that will come down to the 850 conversation. I've had 2 applicants for the ethics liaison position, and what I propose to them is one would be a town and one would be an infra ethics liaison. So hopefully those folks will be on a future agenda.
I see 2. Okay, so ethics is ethics. One policy for.
I understand that they're separate and distinct municipalities. I think from some perspective, there could be complaints involved in both. So I think having separate ethics officers makes a certain amount of practical sense. It's also up to each board, so they can choose to reject individuals, they can choose to hire the same one, it's up to them.
All right. Review agenda for next meeting. My name is Alyssa. You have any ideas?
Hi, this is Amy. I just had a question. I could not hear the last conversation. I don't know what the question was, or intermittently was hearing what Tom's response was. Would you mind just kind of summarizing?
The question was about hiring the zoning administrator position and the ethics officer position, and Tom said that he had applicants for both, and that we would be considering them soon.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. All right. Next meeting. Right out the gate, we gotta consider those funding requests. I'm gonna get ahead of Chris Jens here and say salt use data. Yeah. Might as well knock it out now before we get into budget season. I will take suggestions from the rest of the board.
I guess I'm raising my hand. Sorry. Per our previous conversation, I'll just emphasize that preliminary budget review will be a likely lengthy item between presentations from certain departments. And I think what we had outlined on the schedule we reviewed was kind of like big, expensive, or kind of high level. I don't have it open, so I'm messing up the phrasing. But I think those are big picture things that might need additional review. And I would just say, to the extent incorporating previous conversations on capital plan or public safety makes sense. But to me, that's all part of budget review and planning for that.
Let's do all that. Any other suggestions, Tori?
I know it's very minor on the list, but we have not formally adopted the event permit. I'd like to just carve out a little bit of time to get that squared away.
Right, no one has any, Tom, do you have any suggestions?
I think the budget's gonna take.
Yes, yeah.
Keep the whole thing up.
You know, sometimes my eyes are bigger than my stomach. Right. Well, with all that being said, we now have department head and appointment clarification. A move from Tom. Take it away.
So this was fun, and this hasn't come up yet. It did suddenly. So the town adopted a charter, and the charter requires select board approval of department head positions. So the question that has come up is, what is a department head? Which is not defined in state law. And so I wrote a short memo giving what I thought were some reasonable criteria for us to consider. So I think the public works director, the library director, the recreation director clearly meet that standard. I think for other staff, there's some room for conversation and discretion. You know, we're a small town, and so we in some cases effectively have functions, important functions led by one individual. Assessing is an example, planning is an example. Does that make that individual a department? Part of the criteria I use comes down to some thought about independence and authority, particularly with regards to the budget, particularly with regards to personnel. And so I think if you add those criteria, you would suggest those are not formal department head positions from the perspective of the select board need to approve an appointment. That being said, if you think they are, you would like to approve appointments, so I have no objection whatsoever. Because if it's undefined in the law, I'm not sure it needs to be defined further in the charter. I think there just needs to be a common understanding. Tori? Give your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So I noticed on these bullet lists, you have, authority to and ability for the departmental budget, hire contractors, and staff management responsibilities. But then you note that those other ones, if they gain supervisory responsibilities, then they maybe should be elevated. Should we just add supervisory responsibilities over like a certain number of people into the bullet point? Kind of make it.
Sure. I guess, are you suggesting that this be modified to a future policy for consideration? Would it be a pretty clear set of criteria?
I don't know if it's like a policy or maybe if this belongs more in like the employee handbook thing. The other thing is there a place where these memos are kept where employees can kind of reference this?
I'll make a suggestion too. Just as the way I see department head in my head is non-bargaining unit management employees.
That's another criteria. I did not specify non-bargaining unit because there are management unions.
Right.
You don't have one, but I didn't use that as a criteria.
Sure. That was
maybe one.
Yeah, that was my thinking.
Would that affect the current lineup of the three?
Yeah.
No.
How would, I know planning director doesn't have supervisory, but who would the supervisory director, the planning person, bookkeeper, who would they fall under?
Me.
I thought that would be it.
And the planning director, then Steve Watsky chair, was supervisory over the zoning administrator. And so I think if they had that criteria, that would be a department head. I think his title was planning director, but I think we really thought of him as planning and development director.
I just wanted to clarify that I thought it would go to you, but there's kind of a hole there as to, I'm saying is that there would be three directors and there are other people that need.
All right, Melissa, do you have thoughts?
I think that documenting this is most important, and we'll just note this is mostly just relevant to our charter. I think, again, one of the two purposes in creating the town of Waterbury's charter was one, the local option tax, and two, we noted that the town manager has hiring and firing authority, which again was like true and common understanding, but we codified it. Ironically, this definition doesn't 100% meet everything we had, but I think this is fine. I'm just noting I think Tom is noting as manager, and I'm just saying for the public that certainly he could consult with and or include members of the select board on hiring committees, the particular ones that we are saying are department heads. So the three named here are ones that would be consulted with the select board. I will say that being said, Department of Public Works currently is an EFUD employee and the library director is hired by the library commissioners. So right now, with the exception of the recreation director, Thomas, again, can do that without directly consulting the select board or getting a motion from us, though he could choose to inform us at any point, just to be clear about like what the implications of this are.
Mike.
Being on the select board during the whole process of the charter, one of, I think, our key things that we want to do is keep it simple. And I think that's a really, we didn't want a Burlington charter that has things, as was said, we wanted, it was there to do the local options act, but I think a lot of the other things were not to get really cumbersome. Have a fairly streamlined process for a charter that you may have to change a lot as economic conditions and or personal positions change.
Well, sounds like Tom trying to hire a department head. According to the charter, you don't need a motion to do that. Okay. Anyone else on the board dissenting to that opinion?
I guess I'll make a motion to approve the description of department heads as outlined in the town manager's memo dated November 17th, 2025.
Second. Motion and seconded. What were any discussion?
Motion making a motion.
By Robert's rules, now is the time for discussion on this motion.
I just wanted to suggest, and actually I just sent it to Tom, but I know it's valuable to me if the town is so to have an organizational flow chart. So as different employees came in, they knew who was, where the flow chart went. It's very, if you update it as new employees are changing or a new position is opened up, it's very helpful.
More discussion from the board. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Tori, are you in opposition?
No, sorry, I raised my hand for the aye.
Okay. Any abstentions? Right. This passes. And that moves us on to executive session. So I will need two motions. Based on labor negotiations and personnel. As I'm chairing this meeting, I cannot make it myself, though they are so much fun.
I move to find that premature knowledge of labor negotiations and personnel would place the town at a disadvantage.
Move the second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we'll take that second motion.
I move to enter into executive session with the town manager to discuss labor negotiations and personnel with no expected action afterwards.
Good seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We are now in executive session.